Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Michelle Hussein, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this virtual iftar. Ramadan is always a very special month for Muslims. It's a time when going without food or water through daylight hours teaches us self-control, humility, restraint, and patience. And also a time of the year when we are more mindful of and more generous to those who are suffering, needy, or vulnerable. Charitable giving is a cornerstone of how Muslims around the world spend this holy month. And with COVID-19 affecting more than 180 countries right now, the imperative for that giving, for that charitable focus is visible all around us, including here in the UK. Now, traditionally, we break our fast with a date. So if you do have one to hand or something else, the exact time to reach for it today in London will be 8:35 p.m. and we will do that together.
This is an incredible amount. We are so grateful to each and every one of you. Please do keep sharing where you're from. I think it gives us a brilliant sense of just who we have with us this evening.
And also we're going to have a live conversation later with the Mayor of London and also with the Bishop of London, with Cardinal Vincent Nichols of the Roman Catholic community, the leader of the Roman Catholic community in England and Wales, and with Sheikha Arzu Ahmed. So if you have a question for them, if you put it on the chat, I will see it and I will hopefully use it in those conversations. Now, one of those iftars was due to be hosted by the US ambassador at the new US embassy. But tonight instead, we have a special video message from the US Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback.
Good evening and Ramadan Kareem. My name is Sam Brownback. I'm the Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom for the United States. Thank you for the individuals that have put this iftar together. For finding ways for us to be together during this time of quarantine. It's a difficult time for the global community. Being involved in a quarantine, and when we're used to getting together, we're used to practicing our faith in communities. We've got to find new ways to express that communities, and you're doing that. I thank you for doing that. I also want to thank the faith community for being so out there and helping with this quarantine and to stop the spread of this novel coronavirus.
We have a message from the Chief Rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, because what is really special about this particular iftar is the representation that we have from different faiths. And the Chief Rabbi is a regular presence at interfaith iftars, bringing Muslim and Jewish youth leaders together. So here's his message.
I well recall the very first interfaith youth iftar, which took place some 5 years ago in Lambeth Palace. It was prepared and presented by Haris Bukhari, who since then has put on some truly wonderful iftars. And I'd like to thank Haris for this year's iftar, and also I'd like to thank the Naz Legacy Foundation for everything that they continue to do for the sake of community togetherness. I've always been deeply impressed by the concept of the iftar, through which our Muslim friends reach out and connect with so many people, taking hold of the iftar opportunity to promote and champion the type of values which can enhance our societies. You know, in the lead up to the coronavirus, we witnessed such a worrying increase of hate speech and hate crime right across the world.
A very warm welcome to Cardinal Vincent Nichols, leader of the Roman Catholic Church in England and Wales, to Sarah Mullally, the Bishop of London, and to Sheikha Arzu Ahmed, who is a leading voice among British Muslim scholars. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Cardinal Nichols, perhaps I could begin with you, and I'll put the same question to the Bishop of London in just a moment. What are your reflections on this time, what we are seeing and what we are learning?
Well, I think the first thing I'd like to say is a big word of thanks and to salute the Muslim community for the way it's played its part in what has been a great national effort, and especially borne the discipline of staying away from mosques. As Catholics, as Christians, we know the cost of not being able to gather to pray.
what our present situation tells us is that we're not, and probably maybe we never were. So therefore, it has underlined our dependence on God and also our dependence on each other.
It's been really inspiring, actually, to see how faith communities have responded to that call and been really
including J.K. Rowling and Ashton Kutcher. We have next a message from the Most Reverend Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury.
One of my happiest memories here is of the physical, real iftar in the Great Hall at Lambeth Palace a few years ago. And that extraordinary energy in the room from so many young people sharing together.
Now, our next live speaker is someone who knew the late Naz Bukhari personally because he was his head teacher at Ernest Bevin College in Tooting, South London. I don't know if Mr. Bukhari ever had cause to worry about this particular pupil. He seems to have turned out all right, but who knows, there might be some stories in his past which Naz Bukhari could have shared with us. Sadiq Khan became a lawyer, Labour MP, and is now Mayor of London. Welcome, Sadiq Khan, to this virtual iftar. It's good to have you with us.
Well, can I begin by greeting you and everyone watching with a greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Can I just say how incredibly unfair it is for me to follow the Archbishop of Canterbury, Cardinal Vincent Nichols, the Bishop of London, Sheikh Arzu, and the Chief Rabbi. I mean, normally, Michelle, you give me a hard time on the Today programme, but I had this my 5th year of being involved in the Naz Legacy Iftar, and weren't the last few speakers in the panelists so uplifting, reminding us of all the things we have in common. And all I want to say, Michelle, is...
Does it add a poignancy to this month for you?
It does, yeah. I mean, look, I think that Cardinal Nichols talked about difficulty of physical distance, and it does. It is harder for us. I mean, Sheikh Arzu talked about opening the fast with your family and friends or in the community, doing the congregational prayers, doing the Tarawih prayers at the mosque. All those have been taken away from us. But actually, it's really important that we follow the advice of our scholars and the Prophet, peace be upon him. In his time, when there were plagues, he would stay away from areas where there was a plague, even to the extent of not shaking the hand of somebody who was carrying the plague, even though Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was somebody, of course, who was very fraternal and very friendly. And that shows the importance of public health at the same time as practicing our faith. But it's hard. I'm home all the time. I get up once a day to exercise. So meetings from morning to dusk are at home. And so the day is slower. It is a challenge, but I'm lucky I've got a decent sized home and I've got a garden and a family.
First moment that you thought this could affect London?
Yeah, so in February, I raised this with my public health advisors from Public Health England, and there was lots of reassurance, and nobody, I think, at that stage thought it would be as bad as it's been. I remember writing to Matt Hancock in February, asking questions about this, and in March, having a meeting with the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, and we always plan and prepare for the worst, but nobody foresaw that I spoke to, more than 30,000 of our fellow citizens losing their life because of this virus in our city. More than 5,000 people have lost their lives. And early doors, the Prime Minister chose, rightly or wrongly, not to involve me in his deliberation.
Junaid Shaukat has a question asking what your advice is for Muslims who will soon be celebrating Eid. Will there be special guidance issued by government with regard to Eid prayers or visiting immediate family?
I don't envisage the lockdown being lifted sufficiently for us to pray Eid prayers in congregation. And I suspect, unless it's your closest families in your home, you won't be able to embrace, as we normally do after Eid, prayers. For the foreseeable future, we'll be in a state of lockdown. The Prime Minister will announce some phasing, but we're not going to be having gatherings in mosques, synagogues, or temples, gurdwaras for the foreseeable future. We're not going to be having social gatherings, whether it's in restaurants, for the foreseeable future as well. And that's why I talk about the new normal. And that's why it's really important for us to use this opportunity to reflect on what's important and what isn't.
Not surprisingly, for everyone who is watching this and fasting, thoughts are turning to food. And a couple of food-related questions have come through for you. What is your favorite food to open your fast with?
Well, of course, I open my fast with a date and water, but I love fruit salad, but also I'm prone to samosa and pakora, and I'm guilty as the next person and eat too much fried food. One of the advantages, by the way, there are very few, of the virtual iftars is we're eating pretty healthy at home. Because I'm not going to social gatherings or going to my mum's or my mother-in-law's.
Our next speaker has been hailed a hero imam by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. In 2017, during Ramadan, 3 Ramadans ago, there was a terrorist attack against the mosque in Finsbury Park, resulting in a death and tens of people with lifelong injuries. The imam at the time shielded the terrorist attacker from angry witnesses until the police arrived to arrest him. Imam Muhammad Mahmood was that imam, and he will now provide remarks about the significance of fasting and the spirituality of Ramadan. Over to you, Imam Muhammad.
Thank you, Nizam. What an honor it is to share a platform with such an illustrious lineup of faith leaders and, of course, the Mayor of London. I wanted to begin my speech with an anecdote from the past, which has some resonance with our present moment. 14th century Damascus was ravaged by a horrific plague, which had claimed the lives of thousands of its inhabitants. Amidst the turmoil, a historian reports that after the morning prayer, one day, the rulers were barefoot, and all of the inhabitants came out, men and women, children and the elderly. Among them were Muslims with their Qurans, Jews with their Torahs, and Christians with their Gospels. Everyone was crying, imploring and seeking intercession with God's books and holy prophets. What this powerfully demonstrates is the capacity for moments of crisis to bring people together across boundaries.
Again, we're about a minute before iftar time, so we're going to ask our panelists to join us on screen. We're going to ask attendees from around the world to join us in a moment of silent reflection before we open our fast. London time. For those of you who have something sweet to open your fast with, if you wouldn't mind just showing the cameras that we do have something in an act of solidarity, so that we may hopefully be able to share something via our social media channels. That'd be fantastic. Brilliant. I wish you a blessed iftar, and please open your fasts. We're now going to be joined by we've got hundreds of guests who are streaming, and I know there was a question earlier about how many people have joined in. From a minimum number, we've had well over 500 people join in with our iftar this evening, and we have some special guests who've joined us, including Shabir, Your Royal Highness Princess Badia, Seema, Lord Woolley, and others who've joined us on screen. Thank you for joining us. No, there's no worries. Then we can...
What's left?
it's Ramadan. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Nizam. It's been really a privilege to be part of this. I think the way we've all come together has been very special. So whether this was your first iftar or one of many in your life, you've all been very welcome, and thank you for being with us. May everyone's personal and charitable efforts this month be accepted, be a source of strength, and be of assistance to others during this pandemic and always. Thank you to the Nas Legacy Foundation, and particularly to Haris Bukhari, as well as to these supporting partners: Islamic Relief, M&C Saatchi, Euro Quality Lamp Foundation, Randery Charitable Foundation, Pears Foundation, Rumi Foundation, and the US Embassy. And also to community partners: Faiths Forum for London, British Asian Trust, Emerald Network, and British Muslim TV. And to everyone who joined us live or sent messages, including